Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Preventative and Deferred Maintenance Reality Check. How accurate is your equipment inventory? I'm Jennifer Getz, the editorial director of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar is presented by ARC Facilities. Before we get started, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. Please note the control panel on your screen. This is where you can submit questions via the question box at any time. There will be a Q&A portion after this presentation, so please type your questions there and send them to us. If at any time you experience a technical difficulty, please send us a message via the question section and someone on our team will answer you privately. Also, please note the orange arrow on the left side of your control panel. Clicking on that arrow will either expand or collapse the control panel, so please be sure the panel is expanded so you can access the question box. And if you are interested in continuing education credits, please note that you'll receive a certificate of attendance in an email from Facility Executive after this webinar. You can report to your association for the credit. Now I'll introduce your speaker today. David Trask, National Director of ARC Facilities, is a keynote speaker, podcast host, author, and thought leader in the facilities management industry. David focuses on helping hospitals, universities, K-12 districts, and other organizations leverage innovative technology to drive efficiency in the facilities management industry through thought leadership and advocacy. He has presented at numerous facilities, associations, and conferences, including IFMA, ASHI, APA, NFMT, as well as regional events such as AAHE, HISHI, and regional IFMA chapter conferences. He is also a frequent guest on popular industry podcasts. Most recently, David was selected to be an advisory board member for Facilithon. David is outspoken about the urgent need to minimize the impacts of facility team retirements through seamless and comprehensive succession planning. Hello, David. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hey, thanks, Jen, and thank you everybody for joining. I think this is going to be a heck of a webinar because this is really timely with what I'm hearing around the country in all the meetings that I've had. And I always like to start with a kind of an industry funny, and this is one that I just heard last week. Is one technician is asking the other one, "Where's the air handler that serves this room?" And he said, "Just look for the stains in the ceiling grid." I see this all the time. There guys on the team just don't know where stuff is, and they're hunting all the time. And this is what this topic is all about. Is you've got a handful of folks that just know where stuff is, but everybody on the team should be able to access stuff. And really, how accurate is your equipment database? Really take a hard look in the mirror here and say, how accurate is the stuff that I've got in my systems? You've got thousands and thousands of pieces of equipment all over your buildings. You got stuff on the roof. You got stuff in mechanical rooms. You walk down the hallway, you got fire extinguishers, strobes, all the emergency information, as well as you've got all of the shutoffs in your building. But the challenge is it's all over the place, and it's impossible for somebody to remember where everything is. The larger the facility, the more stuff. But this is where it starts. This is a sample of an export from a CMMS, and this is just the first page, okay? But look at all those missing holes. There's stuff missing, there's a description missing. In a lot of cases, I'll even see the name of the pieces missing, or they've got 5 of the same thing named this, the same air handler named the same, or duplicates all over the place. But let's focus on the missing stuff. Manufacturer, model, serial number. That's pretty important stuff when you're trying to order parts. But it also helps you look at this with regards to install dates and warranties and all of that. But this is a good snapshot to show you what we see all over the place. Almost every organization looks like this. Here's the alternative. Imagine a list that's complete. Okay, imagine being able to walk up to a unit when you're in a mechanical room, scan a QR code, and enter any of the missing stuff that's in your list. That's what we're talking about here. It's a true snapshot of what's really in the field. But more importantly, imagine walking into a mechanical room and you look around, and according to my list, I've got 15 pieces of equipment in here. I see 15 pieces of equipment before I step a foot inside the door. And I'm looked up and I see jockey pumps. I look over to the side and I see maybe a sump pump. I look over and I see heat exchangers, whatever's not in my list. Well, here's the problem. How do I add that stuff? So what I'm seeing is So many people don't have an accurate list of what's actually on the site, in the field, in every one of my buildings. Well, that's a problem, because how are you supposed to maintain something that you don't even have listed? Well, every building that you have is changing. Now, it may not be 100 changes this year, it may not change for a year, but stuff on your sites changes all the time. You're moving fire extinguishers, you're swapping out equipment, okay? But each renovation that you make on your building changes stuff with regards to your equipment. And again, that can be mechanical equipment, that could be your emergency equipment, that could be shutoffs moved, but again, it's constantly changing. So ask yourself, how am I updating that stuff when stuff changes in the field? Okay, am I just writing it on a notepad in my shirt pocket and I forget to write it down, or relay that or upload that into my other systems? A lot of times that stuff just gets missed or forgotten. But here's where it starts too. Each one of these changes that you make to your building represents more drawings, more documents, but it also means new equipment. So you may have binders that are on a shelf someplace. You've got all the related documentation for that building, or for that change, I should say, to that building is represented here. But it's not just here, it's all over the place. So do you know where that equipment is located and how to access all the information for that equipment? All right, is it mapped out? So you've got equipment all over the place. Like I mentioned, on the roof, I can't tell you how many times I'm up on a roof mapping out equipment, or I go into a mechanical room, or I open a janitorial closet and I find, the shutoffs for the isolation valves, or I'll find a pot water heater in there. Stuff's all over the place. But how often is your team having to climb up a ladder just to find a model number, or try to figure out what unit serves what part of your building? So you're popping ceiling tiles even when you're walking down a hallway. How many ceiling tiles is your team popping to try and find the AHU that's up there in that ceiling grid? All right. Or I just did this just last week when I was up in Salt Lake City mapping out equipment. I had to pop 3 or 4 ceiling tiles because I kept hitting the drip pan underneath, or there was a light fixture, whatever, smoke alarms. All right. Just trying to maneuver so I can even see where the equipment was. All right. Why isn't that mapped out so your team knows where it is and they know which tile to pop? But here's the other problem. Deferred maintenance and challenges with not being able to maintain equipment in the current environment means you got some of this stuff too. Stuff that's dying. A lot of orgs are running stuff to end of life, but look at this stuff. I guarantee most of you have got something that looks similar to this, but that's a problem because this is the stuff that's about to die. But your teams run around like chickens with their heads cut off. They're working in the rain, they're working in the snow, they're working all over the place. They're bouncing from floor to floor, building to building, just to do general maintenance, or they're fixing stuff, water leaks, all kinds of stuff, but they're always on the move. But how many times is your team having to retrace lines and then trace them again 6 months later because nobody documented where those lines were traced? This is something I hear all the time. So what we're talking about again is not just the equipment location, but also the stuff that you need to know related to that equipment. But this is what is the underlying problem that we hear all the time. Only a handful of folks know where stuff is. You got a handful of people on your team that have been there for 20 years, 30 years. They just know where the ceiling tile, the pop is. They're the ones, if you look at that picture in the middle at the top there, right? You got some Sharpie written on that ceiling grid. This is a tile you pop. That's the guy's handwriting that wrote that knows where everything is in your building. Well, he also knows where every isolation valve is. But it is impossible for somebody to just remember where everything is. There's thousands of things in your building, all right? Which ceiling tiles do you pop to find stuff? You see the other pictures here, those pot water heaters. I've got a client of mine that calls those time bombs. They rust out, they're all over his building, all right? Those are the things that leak. Those are the things that you see all over the place. Remember that technician photo that I showed at the beginning where I had those stained ceiling tiles? That happens all the time. But if you've got something going sideways in your building today, isn't it pretty important that everybody should be able to know where this stuff is? And if you can't say that you can do that today, ask yourself, why not? All right? You need to be able to document all this stuff so that everybody's looking at the same, everybody's on the same page, and everybody can find the stuff to do the job and be able to react responsibly. You go down a hallway, know exactly where to go in what room to find what it is to mitigate that damage that can be caused when something is going sideways. But here's the other problem. You got a handful of guys on the team that know where everything is. What about the guy who started last week? Okay, that person is blind in your building. They don't know anything about your building. They don't know where anything's located. That's a problem. So what that means is there's a huge ramp up time, right? And remember, even the guys who have been there forever are never going to remember where everything is. But imagine the new person. This is a daily. This is what happens to these folks all the time. They're radioing somebody, trying to figure out where something is. They're calling somebody, trying to figure out where something is. The ramp up time is 6 months to a year plus before a new person can get fully up to speed and be able to know where stuff's located in your buildings. All right? Think about that. That's just figuring out where stuff is, knowing where stuff is, right? And the new people, in many cases, start second shift, third shift. A lot of the healthcare clients that I have, those, they're not on their own for 6 months to a year. And if they are, they're at their second shift, third shift, right? Those are the folks when they're working on a pared back staff because of those late shifts. Well, isn't it more important than ever for those folks to know where stuff is? The guy who normally knows where everything is gone. He's home in bed. That doesn't help the new person. All right. So here's the underline. Everybody's got a guy named Carl or Bob or Jim or Betty that knows where everything is. This guy knows where the bodies are buried. He's been there for 30 years. He knows where every isolation valve was. Maybe he was even working for the GC who did the renovations on that building or built the building. You just hired him. All right, because this is the gentleman who knows where everything is. This is the one that everybody calls. All right. Well, Carl knows where every unit is in your building. He can just on the back of his hand, he can tell you exactly where everything's located. Well, he also knows when something's going sideways at 3 o'clock in the morning, where to go to find the isolation valves. All right. That's a problem. That's a real problem, because it doesn't take long for something to turn sideways. But he also was there when all the renovations happened over time. So he remembers when the renovation happened in 1985, and he also remembers, oh, you know what, we also renovated that room. We did some controls in that room in 1994, and oh, you know what, we actually just did some stuff ourselves in-house in last year. He knows where all that stuff happened. He knows all those changes that have happened in your building over time. Well, the problem is he's one of those guys, I call those single points of failure. Think about that. Single points of failure. If Carl wins a lottery tomorrow, Carl's not coming back to work. So that means all of that institutional knowledge just walks out the door. But what if he retires? He comes into your office and sits down in that chair across from you and says, listen, I'm tired. I've got my time in. I'm retiring. I'm giving you a month, or I'm going to give you till the end of the year. What does that mean for you? Right? You better pray that guy answers his phone for months and months after he's gone, because his phone's going to ring off the hook. But let's think about the implications of that. This is the one that every person on your team calls. And you may have 2 or 3 Carls. You may have a handful of folks at different levels in your org that just know where stuff is. Picture that they're gone tomorrow. What do you do? Okay, if you can't capture that information that's in that guy's head before he walks out the door, you're in trouble. Okay, you're going to be in trouble, and you know you will. So think about the last time you had an incident that happened, and this is the guy that bailed you out. Now he's gone. That's what we're talking about here. But roughly 30% of the facilities team plans to retire in the next 5 years. Ask yourself how many of your team is scheduled to retire in the next 5 years, right? And what does that institutional knowledge mean to you, right? There's a quote there, but I talked to a guy yesterday, and he said that those handful of people, it was roughly 40% of his team that's in that retirement window, represents 80% of his institutional knowledge. So look at that. How many of my guys are going to retire in the next few years? And then what percentage of my institutional knowledge is represented in those handful of people's heads? It's a big number usually. That's a problem. All right. You've got to get that information out of their heads. These people are not getting any younger. All right. But what that means is, again, the loss of that institutional knowledge, what that means to the new people is they lose that shadow time. They lose that seat time, sitting next to that guy, walking around, knowing where everything is. But once it's gone, it is gone. Right? I just talked to a guy last week that said he made an offer to one of his guys that just retired to be on a consult basis for 6 months, and he's paying him more than he was when he was a full-time employee, just so he will be a consultant and come into the office 3 times a week. He needs this guy, and now what he's doing is he's documenting some of that information. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but ask yourself that. What does that mean to you? And then what does that value, or what is that value when you have no time to get the new person to walk side by side with that guy to get that information out of their head? It's a problem, right? But this is where it's getting even worse. It's not just the retiring guys and gals, okay? It's the labor shortage. Even when they leave, where are they going to, how long is it taking you to backfill? I've talked to folks that said that they've had open HVAC positions for 2 years. I talked to a gentleman that's had an open facilities director position at his hospital up in the Carolinas for 15 months. Trying to find people is tough right now. I talked to another gentleman just the other day. He's out of Arizona. He was with he's at a municipality. He's been there for over 30 years. Right? Again, that guy knows where everything is, right? But he's a director level. He just got an offer. He's fully vested at the municipality. He just got an offer to go to work for an engineering firm, making half again what he was making at the municipality. He only has about 5 years left to work before he was going to retire anyway. Again, he's fully vested in his retirement with the city. He left. He jumped. All that institutional knowledge just left with him. Now he's making a lot more money for the next few years. But again, where do you find the people to backfill those positions? There aren't a ton of people coming in to fill these positions. So where do you find those people? Not just directors, not just managers, the technicians in the field. So a lot of organizations are running about 80% staff, maybe a little bit less. So you're doing more with less. So isn't it even more important for you to know where that stuff is, where all that equipment's located, where all those shutoffs are located? Because the new people, again, you've got more people coming in that are going to be new that don't know anything about your building. Everybody's doing more with less. So the immediate loss of that institutional knowledge means when something goes sideways in your building, it can turn bad quickly, okay? These are just some examples. It could be fire, it could be water, pipes leak all the time, pipes burst all the time, sprinkler heads, you have gas leak, you have all this stuff. But when those people who know where all those shutoffs are gone, it takes very little time for something to turn into what you see in these photos. The photo in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a hospital. That happened in 45 minutes. The guy who knew where the isolation valves were was gone. He wasn't gone. He didn't retire. He was on vacation. 45 minutes, $2.5 million in damage. Doesn't take long for something to go sideways because everybody doesn't know where the shutoffs are. Think about that. Just to shut off the water. That's crazy. Thousands and thousands of dollars are lost. But the loss of that knowledge can also cause preventative maintenance to turn into deferred maintenance. Let me repeat that. Preventative maintenance turning into deferred maintenance, right? I can't tell you how many times I sit down across from leaders and organizations and they tell me that they're kicking the can down the road. They're running equipment until it dies. That's their new mantra. They don't have time. They don't have the people to service the equipment. A lot of organizations are outsourcing equipment maintenance to third parties, which means they even lose more control over where that equipment is or what happened on that equipment. Okay, if you lock yourself into an outsourced vendor, how do you switch vendors when one knows where everything is? You need to control where the information is, and all the information about your equipment, about your space should be controlled by you, not by vendors, not by your people. It's by you, by your team. The information should live with the building, not with the people. Okay, let me repeat that. Information live with the building, not with the people. Shouldn't be in somebody's head, only a person's head. Everybody should be able to access, no matter who it is, your vendors, your team, you, leadership, your planning department, your construction team, all of them, everybody on the same space, but on the same page. But what this means is if they don't, it slows everything down. Okay, routine maintenance gets slowed down, gets kicked down the road, right? It can also result in a lot more breakdowns. Things are not getting any newer. I showed you those pictures earlier. You know, it's, again, those are time bombs. You know, how long is that pump going to last? How long is that AHU going to last? It's on its last legs. Are we servicing it? Can we service it? Do we have time to service it? All right. This is all about your business continuity. Imagine if you're in healthcare and your air handler breaks over your ORs. Okay, what does that mean? That's lost revenue. Okay, on average, $15,000 to $30,000 a day in lost revenue per OR. But it also impacts patients. But if you're not healthcare, it impacts the people who visit your buildings. It also impacts your staff, your employees. That's what this means. If you can't maintain your building, you don't know when things are going to break. They're not on your clock. They break at noon some days. Other days they break at 1 o'clock in the morning. The longer you're kicking this can down the road and not able to maintain your equipment, you're completely out of control as far as knowing when stuff's going to break. So half the battle is even finding the equipment. Half the battle is also documenting what you're doing with your equipment. But how do you bridge the gap between the old and the new? All right, and we're going to dive into this. So this is the problem. Again, all these changes to your building, all right? You've got all these MEP drawings. You got all this stuff that shows where stuff is in the building, but stuff changes all the time. So which drawings do you grab to find all your lines that are running for the new air handlers or the old air handlers that are in your building? Do you know? Right? Did somebody even put them back when they grabbed them? Well, here's the other problem. Okay, which drawings do I grab here? Are all of these my as-built? Are some of them design drawings? Are some of them permit? They're all over the place. So here's the challenge. Scanning the documents in doesn't fix the problem. Okay, even if you've scanned the stuff in and you've dumped it on a share drive someplace, or you got it in some kind of a, I don't know, it's in box or something like that. If I can't find stuff and it's not even named right, how am I going to know what's what? All right, I just talked to a guy yesterday. For one floor of a building, he had 800 drawings, 800. Okay, then he tells me that anything beyond a certain date, they've ripped out and replaced. Well, those are all mixed in. So he's opening up one drawing at a time. PDF. Some of them were CAD drawings. He couldn't even open those. So Just like I said, by scanning documents in and then dumping them on a share drive someplace doesn't mean I'm going to be able to find stuff to do my job. And a lot of folks don't even scan the binders. They're just on a shelf someplace collecting dust, right? It's a problem. So that's the first issue. But you need to start documenting where your equipment's located today. These are real pictures, all right? The one in the middle up there at the top, that was last week. The one to the right there, that guy just started with this organization, right? And that was a few weeks ago. They're documenting where stuff is so that the new guy knows where everything is, as well as the anybody who's on the team is knowing where everything on your sites is located. You got to start. You have to document where this stuff is, and also have the ability to add stuff as you find stuff. All right, you're on a ladder, you're working on a smoke detector, and you got a ceiling tile pop. Turn your head around. There might be a valve right behind you. Is that in your list? Do you know where that is? Is it documented? Imagine pulling your phone out of your pocket, taking a picture of it, pinning where it is located, and everybody now sees that too. So again, this should be updated as you find stuff and easy to find stuff. So this is what it could look like. Imagine having all your equipment, all your shutoffs, all of your details about the equipment, all available no matter who the person is on your team. All right, you know exactly what ceiling tiles to pop. You know exactly what units up there before you even get up there. Imagine you before you even go over and jump into your golf cart and run over there, you know what filter sizes, what belt sizes you need to even go over there. That's what this is. Access to information wherever the heck you are. All right, your field team is out in the field. They're not sitting in front of a computer. They're not down in the basement or in your plan room. They're running around fixing stuff. They should be able to access the stuff in the field and then also update it as they change stuff. I mean, that's the goal here. Everybody's on the same page. Everything's current. Everybody can do it, and it's gotta be easy. So let's take a look at what that could look like. All right. This is kind of a 30,000 foot view, but let's kind of talk about that. So imagine you want to see all your drawings. I just want to see the historical drawings for my building. I want to see all the changes that have happened. Click on a building, click on a map, and it actually shows me where every renovation touched in the building on this particular part of the building. Tap on it and there's the drawing set. Okay, I can see all the historical drawings for that part of the building. Well, now I want to see equipment, all right? It's, again, simple. Pull my phone out of my pocket. This is a tablet, but same thing on my phone. Walk up to a piece of equipment. It's got a QR code on it. Scan the QR code, just like you do a menu in a restaurant right now, right? And see all the information associated with this piece of equipment. There's an O&M manual attached here. There's parts lists. There's all the information about this piece of equipment, all on my phone or my tablet or my desktop, wherever the heck I'm at. I know where stuff is and I can find it and all the associated information with it. I don't have to dig, okay? I'm the brand new person who just started in the building and I have this in my pocket day one. Same thing with shutoffs. Click on it, click the building you want to see the shutoffs for, very simple. Click a button that says shutoffs, gas, water, power, med gas, all right? And then tap on an icon and it's even got photos associated with it. Make, model, serial number for equipment, all your fire extinguisher locations, all your strobes, all the information. But everybody's on the same page and accessing that wherever the heck they are. But the transition from the old to the new guard is simple. New hires have access to information day one. They start today, they start yesterday, they start last week, doesn't matter. They get access to where your equipment locations are day one. Imagine that. I'm the new person on the team and I walk in and I get an email that says, I now have access to this system or that system, and I know where every piece of equipment is. I know where every shutoff is in my building. Day one. Think about that. How long is that training ramp up time today? They don't have access to that stuff first day. I guarantee you that. Why not? Go from months to training to weeks. Give instant access to that information day one. New team members can then work with the guys on core competencies, the stuff that they're working on with those teams that are about ready to leave, or you've got somebody who gave their notice they're switching jobs, okay? All that information day one for the new hires. But it's not rocket science here. Technology, you guys are using a lot of this stuff today, all right? Everybody's using QR codes, everybody's using softwares, but at the end of the day, imagine we're in an environment today where it uses AI to learn from documentation, scanning those documents. So now they're searchable, readable. QR codes, like I said, should be attached to every piece of equipment, right? Mobile optimized. Every person on your team has a smartphone in their pocket. Every person on your team could have an iPad. Every person on your team can sit down at a computer and access all the information for your building. But the most important bullet on this screen is take custody of your information. You own it, your buildings. You should have control over that and then be able to share that with everybody. Imagine if you have all this information and you share it with your contractors. You share it with your design construction team. I showed that image where there, that little graphic where it showed how to access drawings for a part of a building to design construction teams, and their jaw hits the floor. It's a big deal. They spend hours trying to find all the drawings for parts of your building. And imagine they can access it in about 30 seconds and see all the drawings that are just touching that floor. That's what you're talking about here, that fast. But the key takeaways here are proactively start capturing this knowledge before it leaves. Those guys and gals that are on your team here are not they're not getting any younger. But also think about this. You're losing people on your team to other employers in your backyard. All right. I talked to a lot of folks that are even working on some training programs to really get their team additional certifications and things like that. But I've also had folks that have come in and they've interviewed people. It's a third or fourth interview, and they'll come in and they're ready to make them an offer, and they'll say, I just was going to see what you were going to offer. I already took another job. That happened yesterday on a call that I was talking to a guy. He interviewed a guy that morning, and the guy had already accepted a job with another employer, but he wanted to see if they paid more. These stories happen all the time. But those are the folks who are on your team today that are taking those other jobs are leaving too. And they may be giving you 2 weeks notice or no notice. They just leave. So capture that information of the legacy guys and also the people who are leaving before they leave. Everybody should be on the same page. Scan and digitize all your stuff. There's no excuse for having piles of paper all over the place. This is 2022. All right, what are you doing? If you're still getting paper at the end of the day, come on. That stuff gets filed someplace. But more importantly, the guy who's working on a unit in your mechanical room isn't looking at paper, right? He should be looking at his phone. If he's grabbing rolls of drawings and taking them into a mechanical room, that's a problem. And then is it going to be put back? Store all your stuff in one spot. All in one place, all your drawings, all your warranties, your shutoffs, your equipment locations, emergency plans, all that stuff should be in one spot. Choose a platform that is user-friendly. I'm going to quote something that I hear all the time. If it's not easy, my guys aren't going to use it, right? It has to be simple. Mobile access wherever the heck you are, but what that means is it's going to save you time. With being short-staffed, time is at a premium, right? Most folks are spending an hour, 2 hours running around trying to find stuff to do their job. Come on. You know, it's value. Time is a value right now, and especially at a premium right now. So you need to be able to access to do their job, access all that information to do their job, so you get that time back to do more stuff, get more work orders done, right? All available through mobile systems. Don't have mobile apps, so you can't access it in the field, or it's tough To access stuff, remember, look at that bullet right up above there, user-friendly. If it's not easy, your team's not going to use it. You got to make it easier. And this is a tool in their toolbox, right? This is a tool. This is just like a wrench. This is there. I can't tell you how many times I talk to folks, the team that's in the field, the technicians that look at other ways they can figure out how to document something, because then they just don't have to remember. You've got thousands of stuff all over your building, thousands of pieces of equipment, thousands of documents for your building. It's impossible for anybody to remember where that is. Put it in a system that you can find the stuff when you need it, all right? So let's talk about starting. What do you do? And I always say, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the guy to leave? Are you waiting for the guy's last day before you start trying to get stuff out of that guy's head? I can't tell you how many times I walk into and talk to somebody and they tell me that it's almost like a deer in the headlights. I don't know what to do. I don't have any kind of plan. Well, your plan is you've got to start. You have to start, because if you don't start now, you're just kicking that can down the road. All right, you have to start now. Access that information, get it in the system that you can find the information and everybody's on the same page. You've got to start. So the path forward is, again, there's that word again, custody. You know, a year from now, you'll wish you had started today. All right. Those guys on your team, you have to take custody of that building information, get it out of their heads, document everything that you can. This is a living, breathing thing that should change as you find stuff. The combination of retiring workforce and a talent shortage signal challenging times ahead for FM. This is a problem, and it's not getting any better. The businesses that plan strategically and employ the right technology can not only attract and retain high-quality facilities teams, but will find themselves positioned for the next decade. I talked to a guy just the other day, and he told me something I thought was just gold. He said, I'm not building something for today. I'm building something for 5 years from now. Think about that. You're building for the future, right? Sure, it's going to benefit the guys as you're building it out, but he's building something for the guys that he hasn't even hired yet. So he's thinking ahead. Remember, the new people that are replacing those people are blind to your building. That ramp up time is 6 months to a year plus. It's a time suck. So getting these people up to speed faster is going to do nothing but help you. And it's not rocket science, okay? You partner with an organization that can do this quickly. I talked to, and again, when I say partner with one that can do it quickly, I talked to a guy the other day that said, I outsourced to do a condition assessment to this company. They came out and we're going to look at all and identify all my equipment, but they don't get on ladders. I couldn't get my head around that. I said, they what? They don't get on ladders. I said, so how are they going to document make, model, serial number, any of the additional information off that unit that's, you know, suspended that AHU that's hanging from the ceiling of that shop and it's, 20 feet in the air? Oh, they just don't do it. I'm like, what? Remember that list at the beginning that I showed you where it's missing all that stuff? That's a problem. You're hiring a company that will come out and do a condition assessment, but they're not actually capturing the information about the equipment. Is that giving you a full snapshot? Come on. There's a better way. So let's take some questions. Jen, let's hear it.
Awesome. So thank you, David, so much for this presentation, and thank you to our attendees for sending in questions. We will now have our Q&A to address the questions that you have sent in, and please continue to submit any questions that you may have. Okay, so to start, this gentleman is asking, how long does it typically take to map out all of the equipment?
Yeah, I can only speak to what my team does. We actually go out on site and we're mapping out equipment, depending on the square footage, but we're doing roughly 1 million square feet of equipment mapping about a week and a half. Yeah, so and that includes documenting all the shutoffs, all the mechanical equipment, so all your HVAC systems, your pumps, water heaters, all of that, as well as all the emergency equipment. We actually have a team that goes out, or several teams, I should say, and go out and map out all of this stuff. Yeah, it's not a long process and very minimal impact on your team. In many cases, we get master keys, a card swipe or a badge, and we get a list of all the equipment, and we fill in all the blanks.
Yeah, that's perfect. That kind of goes into the next question of, does your team really come out and do the equipment mapping?
Yeah, we do. And I think one of the keys too is it's not just mapping out equipment that's in a provided list. It's identifying equipment that's not in the list too is equally important. Your team's you're mapping out equipment, or I'm sorry, you're changing out equipment all the time. You're swapping out pumps. You're swapping out the different things in your building all the time. It's not unusual for me to walk into a mechanical room and the old pump motor's laying next to the new one, and it's been sitting there for 6 months because nobody had time or they got called away to do something else. So none of the new information for that pump motor was ever put back into the system, right? They should be able to do that, pull their phone out of their pocket and update that pump information while they're standing there fixing the pump, right? Again, it's all about real-time access and real-time changes as you swap stuff out.
So I have one question here that kind of goes in line with if you do the equipment mapping, does ARC Facilities get on ladders?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Some of the photos I showed of those ladders, that's my team. They're up on, we're popping ceiling tiles, and it never fails either that you're popping a ceiling tile, because a lot of these guys don't know where that stuff is. They're popping a ceiling tile, and nothing's marked. I walk down hallways all the time, and there's blue dots, red dots, yellow dots on the ceiling grid, or there's an arrow. No descriptions, no nothing. And I'll ask the guy who's walking with me if we do have an escort, what is that? I don't know. Well, who put that dot up there? I don't know. It was probably John. Well, who's John? I don't know. I never met him. He left 5 years ago. But I hear his name all the time. It's like, come on. No. But it also never fails that, when we're popping our head, up through the ceiling grid, that we'll have to pop, a tile or 2 tiles or whatever to try and figure out. You bump your head on the pan that's underneath the unit. But again, being able to take a photo, and that's what we do. We take photos and attach it with the equipment records. We take multiple photos and even video and attach it to there that shows, hey, you have to pop this ceiling panel over here that's up against the wall. Be careful because you can't get up there. You're going to need to turn, or you got to have this tool or whatever. All that information then gets added to that equipment pin showing that location. And now you know what you need to have and which panel specifically to pop before you can get there.
Perfect. Awesome. So moving on to our next question, what if I don't have an equipment list?
Oh yeah, no, that's a good one. I've got many of our clients that have nothing, or they don't think it's a reliable list at all, or it's a partial list. We'll create the list. When we're out there and we're mapping out the equipment, if you don't have a list, we're going to create a database in the system, and then you can export that out and import it into your systems that you have for your CMMS, for your work orders. So we can create that list, and we have fields, like make, model, serial number. If it's got warranty install dates on the unit, we can capture that information. Also, we put in room, we put in floor, we put in building, all of that information, then it can all be exported and again, imported into those other systems. But I think what's the most important thing here to understand is it's now a field verified list. We're in the field verifying what's actually out there. So if I've got a list that shows 10, 15, whatever pieces of equipment are supposed to be in this mechanical room, and I see there's 30 different pieces of equipment, I can actually add those new pieces of equipment in the system and put a unique identifier in there that's now searchable that shows those pieces of equipment that aren't on your list, and you can sort it that way and then again, you have a field verified actual list of what you've got out there.
Perfect. Can you put info in the QR code that says new equipment will be replacing this item on a certain date? That's our next question.
That's a really good question. Yes, I'm actually working with a healthcare client right now, and he's working on budgets, and he's trying to figure out, and again, leadership, senior leadership within your CEO, COO, they don't understand what the impact of equipment is. So when you're submitting budgets saying, hey, I've got 15 pieces of equipment that are going to be basically end of life, I've got to think about replacing these things. All they see is it is a number. Right? But they don't look at it from the impact of where is it. So let me give an example. If I've got an air handler that is just on its last legs, but that serves ORs 1 through 4, all right? It's a pretty important piece of equipment. But to the CEO or CFO, that doesn't mean anything to them. I can tell them it impacts these, but think about it from a visual. So to be able to show them, listen, here's the unit, and it services these rooms, these parts of their building. That's a very important visual to be able to show them, listen, this is going to impact these, and it's on its last leg. It could die any day, all right? Then that's an important visual, but we have a way to put in it's called an asset tag, or an asset ID tag, I should say, where we can put some unique identifiers in there that says like, call that EOL 2025. So I'm assuming that the end of life is 2025 for that unit. And I can now sort that equipment list and search for all the equipment that's going to expire, what I'm estimating will die in 2024. And that's a very important and powerful visual to be able to show that even on a plan, on a floor plan, showing here's what this means as far as impact. So again, that's one of my clients is utilizing the system to do that. And I just think that's a great outside the box way to be able to demonstrate the importance of that, knowing where this information is, even to senior leadership.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, for our next question, does this product interface with any CMMS systems, Manager Plus, Brightly, and any others?
Certainly, yeah, we're open API, so our system will actually communicate with other systems. The challenge is always, will they communicate back? A lot of old legacy systems, they weren't built for mobile, so a lot of those don't. But I always pose the question back this way too. We can create or have URLs that link back and forth to our system and other systems, even if they do have a mobile interface. I always say this, on your computer today and on your phone today, how many apps do you have open on your phone at one time? You have your email, you have maybe Facebook or Twitter or whatever. You have all these different apps open on your phone, but you have multiple on your computer too. It's easy to toggle between them, all right? When we get an asset database from either a CMMS or some other system, usually those assign a unique asset ID number or asset number of some sort. We import that into the system, so now everything matches up. So what's in one system also matches up in the other system. So I think the most important thing is a lot of these, again, legacy systems, they struggle with being able to interface back and forth. We built ours to be able to communicate back and forth. The challenge is, do they? And that's the question I think over the way I would pose it back.
Yes, yes. We have one gentleman asking now, I outsource my VAV maintenance. Can I give my vendor access?
100%. I recommend you give your vendor access. I also recommend you give all of your outside main contractors, if you've got an architect you work with, you've got GCs that you work with, you can actually give your GCs access and your trades access to the platform during the construction process or even leading up to the planning process. You need to give your vendors access because that way everybody's on the same page. They'll have full visibility to all the historical records that have happened, all the historical changes that have happened, as well as current state.
Perfect. Our next question is, who updates the equipment when we change or add something?
Yeah. Yeah, our system, and again, I'm only speaking to our system. I can't speak to other systems. Your team can access and update things on the fly. So if you move a fire extinguisher or you move strobes or you move something around, small stuff like, I don't know, 2 or 3 things or whatever in a room, we're training your team how to do that. So there's unlimited training, unlimited users, unlimited documents in our system. There's no additional fee for that. But if say you renovate a whole floor, all right, or you renovate multiple floors, we'll come back out and remap that stuff out. But again, the goal here is you want your team to be able to update stuff too on the fly, because again, stuff changes all the time, every day. So you want them to be able to change stuff as they move stuff around too.
Perfect. Yeah. We have another question. So this system looks easy, but I have new hires throughout the year. Do I have to pay an additional fee to train each new hire?
No, not at all. I actually had 3 trainings this week with 3 new hires. 2 of them were actually, their start date was a day apart. So I did a training with one and I did another training. Part of their onboarding process is that train with this client anyway, their onboarding process is that they have a training with us day 2 after they've started. Okay, day 2. So we're actually part of their onboarding process is we train them how to do this. Every one of those new hires, oh my goodness, it's funny because they know that they're going to be blind when they walk into the building. They don't know anything about your building. When I show them this, it's like a sigh of relief. I mean, it's literally a weight comes off because they're like, wait a minute. So you're telling me I can find the shut off on the 3rd floor, southeast corner right now? Yeah, you can. And I get to they sit back in their chair and just shake their head. And then they start telling me the stories of their previous employer that's been a nightmare for the last 5 years is why they switched their job. This is a way to attract new hires too. I mean, if they walk into your site and it's not a mess and trying to find stuff to do their job, that's a perk. That's a pretty substantial perk.
Absolutely. I think we have time for one last question. How do you recommend sitting the team that keeps running around to introduce and implement such an application and change an operation? Can you suggest the best approach of making such a cultural change? So I think, yeah, they're just kind of wondering, how would you implement this kind of
Yeah.
technology?
Yeah, what I found that's been great is, obviously the ramp up time, isn't significant in our system anyway. I mean, we're typically on site within, a couple of weeks of start mapping stuff out. All we need is floor plans to get started there. All the drawings and organizing all that stuff, we actually scan all that stuff in and organize it, and that takes a little bit longer. But getting the ramp up is traditionally roughly 90 days. And then the on-site onboarding of the employees, we like to get them involved day 1. Okay, so when we're out there in the field and we're mapping stuff out, I'll bring extra iPads and we have them do it side by side with us, and we show them how easy it is. But what's awesome is we start to cull through the staff that you've got and identify what we call the super users, the teams who are really going to embrace this. And we identify those. And we also can track, user activity and things like that to see who those people are. But we really come at it from a train the trainer perspective too. All right. We get them to tell us other ways, other use cases that they could do. And the adoption's been fantastic. I think, like I said earlier, it's very much so a tool. It's not software per se, it's a tool. I mean, it is software, but they start to look at it as, this is a tool for me to do my job. This is an easier tool for me to do my job. And it's not this crazy hard thing to do. It's not, it's just simple. And, again, it's gotta be easier. They won't use it, but the onboarding and getting people up and getting clients up and running has been just incredibly fast.
Wonderful. Well, awesome. It looks like we are just about out of time. Thank you again, David, for sharing this presentation with us today. And
My pleasure.
for sponsoring this webinar. And thank you to our audience for attending today. A recording from today's session will be made available on our magazine's website, facilityexecutive.com, and at arcfacilities.com. And if we weren't able to address your questions today, our speaker can address it after this presentation privately. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you all.